I invite you to close your eyes, and I want you to grasp an image of what it is you see when you see utopia. You can open your eyes now, and perhaps you had a wonderful image. But if you're like me, it's very hard to see something clearly when you're trying to imagine what is utopia. And perhaps that's not because we don't know what utopia is, but because it requires a different way of seeing. It's a different kind of image. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is how can we see differently? How can we think differently with sight? And my charge will be to you to once a day try to see something through a different lens. The lens that I'm going to be speaking about today is, as you heard in the introduction, gratitude. And I'm first going to share that with you through the form of a story. And the story happens to be about a storm. It began on a hot summer afternoon. How many of you like summer storms when they come in the evening? It's kind of nice. Hot day, it's a way to settle down. I enjoy them, at least, and I happen to have an obsession with the weather as it is already, so it's something that I always welcome when there's drama in the skies. Careful for what you wish for could not have meant any more in the year 2012 when the derecho came through the Ohio Valley. And if you know of what derechos are, they're inland hurricanes, right? This is not like any storm I've ever seen in my life. It came blowing through, ripping trees up from the roots. It snapped telephone wires in half, and it left people without power for days, if not for weeks. I was among those people. I was not happy. And so if you've been without power even for 5 minutes, sometimes that can put you in a frenzy. Or at least it can put me in a frenzy. And it certainly did throughout the time that I had no electricity. I continued to get frustrated. All the conveniences that I had gotten used to didn't work. I didn't know how to use my time. And the straw that broke the camel's back was when I would walk into rooms and still flip up light switches. And I knew the electricity didn't work, and I still did, and I got mad, and I yelled at the wall. And I think I was more upset with myself to realize how programmed I had actually become, and how I couldn't rely on the natural world to live. That's a very humbling moment. So during that time, one day, I took a walk, and I went to a path that I run on almost every single day, and this is what I encountered. I encountered trees lining the path, and so I could have gotten upset with them. I could have turned around just like I did anything else, but instead, I was stopped dead in my tracks. And I stood there and I wondered, these trees that I'm seeing right now laying before me, all those other days that I went running, I never saw them. And then it made me reflect even further in thinking about my life. And as I continued to think about that, I realized all this time I had been pointing out things that were missing, things that weren't working. But I had not stopped to think, I'm still alive. I still have that. I looked at the trees, and there they are, and I realized there's a lot of things in my life that maybe I've been passing every single day and not seeing. And maybe I need to think twice about that. So that moment, it's amazing the magnitude that you can find in a moment, right? Has left a lasting impression on me to think differently, to ask questions, but most of all, live with gratitude. And so I'm going to share with you 3 things that gratitude has done for me. One being that gratitude sees interruptions as invitations. And what I mean by that is this. If you can imagine what the ground looks like after an earthquake, not pleasant, but with gratitude you can look at it differently. What happens in an earthquake is the ground cracks, and you begin to see beneath the surface. Some of the richest soil is beneath the surface. Our lives are very much the same. We go through a lot of struggle, and when we do, we get stretched, we get pulled, and we begin to be asked to look deeper. And sometimes we realize depths that we wouldn't have been called to recognize before. And so gratitude challenges us to look at interruptions, any interruptions we face, and say, what's here that I didn't see before? What can I take from this? Second, gratitude deepens and expands the horizons for re-envisioning reality. So as we're looking at interruptions differently, we also begin to expand our views of other things and start searching for value. So I shared with you that the path that I run on, I'm a runner, so I'm always looking forward. And maybe many of you in here have that same sense, whether it be with running or other things in your lives. We're goal-oriented. We have things we want to achieve. We have points we want to reach in our lives. But sometimes our points can lead us to dismiss all the things in our surroundings that are equally as valuable. And it's actually the point that's a lot less than the journey towards it. With gratitude, you can expand your vision to think more broadly, to open your eyes to see what's all around you. If any of you are mountain climbers or if you've had an opportunity to reach the edge, it's interesting because once you reach that point in your destination, you start to see above you, beneath you, far beyond you, and behind you. And so what gratitude does is it lends you to see differently. Not necessarily lending you to have to go to a mountaintop to see that, but to recognize in your life, what are all the values around me right now? So what do I mean by that in terms of putting these two ideas into practice? Well, the third thing that I think is most important to me as a communication scholar, one who focuses on interpersonal communication, is how can gratitude lend you to see other people differently, right? And we began our program today by the message of sit by different people, get to know others. And I really think we need to ask ourselves that question. Oftentimes it is the fact that we come in and we sit by people we know, and of course we do, that's a custom, that's a norm. But if we made an effort to sit by someone else, or an effort to reach out to someone new each day, I want you to think about the value your life might receive from that. That person has a perspective, a story, something to appreciate that's new. And with each of those new perspectives that you gain, think about the way that you could see the world that you otherwise on your own would never have had an opportunity to do. So I'm asking you to see others differently. And how do we see people differently? What is it that we do? I'm going to go back to this concept of gratitude and bring it home with this point that I have about how I see us practicing this with people. And that is, right now, we are calling a lot of attention to gratitude. It's becoming a more popular thing that I see in a lot of public discourse. At the same time, it often stops at reflecting on and taking account for what you're grateful for. And I would argue that gratitude is not merely a recognition of what we receive. It's a gift in and of itself. And when you give the gift of gratitude to somebody, what you're doing is essentially giving them a sense of value. And when you give someone a sense of value, you're giving them something that they alone can't give to themselves. So then they start seeing themselves differently. They have a different sense of appreciation. And we need that. Our first presentation addressed that notion of vulnerability and rejection that we often face. And to think how gratitude might couple that, how many people are hurting to be valuable, and how you can play a role in that each day. And so my charge for you is this. I want for you to think differently. Think differently about your life. Think differently about how you see things. And most importantly, think about how you're seeing others. That is the vision that Utopia wants to be. Thank you.